Hi there, my name is Dr. Katrina Cox, and I am the author of The Opportunity Cancer, and I'm also a naturopathic doctor. I wanted to talk to you today about healing stress. In our last video, we talked about the hidden cost of stress, but now how do we get into the nitty-gritty of healing it? And this is a very important conversation because, like we talked about, stress is a silent killer, and it doesn't really affect everybody in any of the same ways. It does, however, affect people on a mental, emotional level, but also on a physical level. So there are some people that come into my office and they'll be laid back and they'll be like, yeah, I'm not stressed. And I'm like, great, that's awesome that you don't have that perception or the mental issues around stress. But when we do the stress questionnaires from the book, we understand that there is an impact physically. Right. And so we're recognizing behaviors and patterns. And cancer is one of those diseases that creates a whole level of stress in its treatment, in its understanding on how we treat it, in its in its inability to be very easy pathway where we can see things happen very clearly, in all the statistics and the changing research, all of those things add a level of stress. And so the way I like to approach it is I like to get an understanding of how and start by recording where stress is impacting you. And so there's many different tools. We can do blood work. There's all kinds of different things that we can do. In the book, we talk about something called the survivor stress model. And it's just one way for us to have a record and have a quantifiable way to understand how stress is impacting you physically and mentally. And that's really important. So we start by understanding where stress is a factor for you. These things remind me of people, understanding where you're at is important, but understanding how you cope with stress is also important. And this is where some of the case studies that are very important come to me, different coping strategies, everything from sex to food to creativity and piano to, punching a bag and going to the gym. There are so many ways to cope with stress. And when we're in this cycle of trying to recover, we really need to not only understand our baseline of where our stress is at, but also where we can go deeper and find out what our coping mechanisms is. And one of the stories that I like to share is Jake. Jake discovered he had neuropathy from cancer treatment, and he came out not healing completely from his fingers. Jake was also an avid guitarist. Now, it wasn't his day job, but it was his hobby. And one of the most important things that we struggled with Jake's recovery was the fact that neuropathy was a really big challenge for him. And it made it so that the stuff and the music that he knew, he couldn't play. And so we ended up talking a lot about different artists that have made it big and those types of things, and some of the limitations that they experienced and how they found ways around it. And it was really interesting for me because when Jake started to finally be able to put all the pieces together, we were able to see that he realized he just needed to write music that he could play. So instead of playing other people's music, he was able to make it so that the music had chords that were much more able for him to connect. And with that, he actually created all his own music. And that's a wonderful thing. And now he's being able to put himself into thriving. The research shows that stress is a big factor in recovering from pain and fatigue, both in the cancer realm as well as in other realms. And so one of the ways to move to thriving is to make sure we're addressing the stress. They also did this really interesting study. It was a randomized controlled trial. It was a small group of women who had breast cancer. They put them in only a 6-week mindfulness recovery program, 6 weeks. And at 2 years, that group that had participated in the 6 weeks of mindfulness had better outcomes, all on blood work, all on scans, all on reoccurrence, and all on life. And so just 6 weeks of mindfulness training at the beginning of those people's recovery, those women's recovery, made a huge impact. Can you imagine if we did more than 6 weeks? Can you imagine if more people participated in these types of mindfulness programs? We would be able to elevate people from surviving to thriving. So here are the 4 steps that I tell people, 3 plus a hint. 1, discover where stress level is. Let's start there. 2, build an individualized treatment plan around addressing the emotion and restoring the physical health. And 3, recognize your coping mechanisms. What are the things that you do to cope with stress, and figure out how to change them or alter them or find resilience in them or just participate in them now that we're, in that survivorship mode. The 4th is really a tip. Remember that small changes make a big impact. So if we're consistent with small things, the bigger the outcome will be. So I hope that this video gave you some information, and I'd love to share more. Come join us in our community. Don't forget to get a copy of The Opportunity in Cancer, and I'd love to see you again.